forward on lowering the student loan rate, which is expected to increase to 6.8% July 1st unless Congress acts. You can follow the Senate debate on C-SPAN 2. And the House Armed Services Committee meeting all day today looking at the 2013 Defense Authorization Bill. That's live on C-SPAN 3. Now live to the House floor here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. Prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Loving and gracious God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. Bless the members of this assembly as they set upon the work of these hours of these days. Help them to make wise decisions in a good manner and to carry their responsibilities steadily with high hopes for a better future for our great nation. Deepen their faith, widen their sympathies, heighten their aspirations, and give them the strength to do what ought to be done for this country. May your blessing, O God, be with them and with us all this day and every day to come, and may all we do be done for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Higgins.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the President of the United States.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Secretary.
I'm directed by the President of the United States to deliver to the House of Representatives a message in writing.
Chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I wear this pin today in honor of May as National Foster Care Month. At the end of fiscal year 2010, over 100,000 foster youth were eligible and waiting adoption. 65% of former foster children experienced at least 7 school changes while in care. In 2010, almost 30,000 youth aged out of the foster care system without a permanent family. In some states, up to 50% of former foster and probation youth become homeless within the first 18 months of emancipation. In some cities, nearly 60% of victims of domestic minor sex trafficking are youth from the foster care system. All children deserve safe, loving, and permanent homes. We must work together to create good policy for foster youth, and I would encourage anyone thinking about becoming a parent to consider changing a life through adoption and foster care. I yield back.
For the purpose, the gentleman from New York rise. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to remind this House of the far-reaching impact that the proposed postal facility closures would have. In my Buffalo community, closing the William Street Mail Processing Facility would affect 700 jobs. Closures would also adversely impact our printing and mailing industry, in addition to not-for-profit agencies and local municipalities who rely on regular mail service. Last week, the Senate took the first step in postal reform by passing legislation that would prevent the large-scale closure of postal facilities by requiring the Postal Service to maintain overnight delivery for at least 3 years. Mr. Speaker, though the Senate bill is not perfect, we must bring it to the floor immediately in order to achieve real reform. This bill is our best path forward. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose, the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Energy and Commerce Health Subcommittee approved bipartisan legislation to reauthorize and reform the Food and Drug Administration user fee program. This bill will smooth the process of reviewing medical devices and drugs, increasing transparency and predictability. It's a big step in the right direction for helping American companies continue to lead the world in medical research. Unfortunately, the medical device industry faces a huge setback starting next year. Last week, Senator Toomey and I visited Precision Medical Products in Denver, Pennsylvania. In a roundtable meeting, we heard from a dozen medical device companies about how the new Obamacare-created medical device tax will destroy jobs and stall research. This new 2.3% tax is on all revenue, not just profits, meaning that even if a company is struggling to break even or losing money, they have to pay this hefty tax bill. And this new tax is over and above the new user fees that they've agreed to pay. Already, some companies have cut back. Yesterday, we took a big step forward, but if this new tax becomes reality next year, we could still lose the edge on medical device equipment. It should be repealed. I yield back.
For what purpose, the gentleman from Missouri rise. Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday was President Harry Truman's birthday. One of his quotes is particularly appropriate today. He said, "The purpose of our society is to enable the individual to attain the highest achievement of which he is capable." The highest achievements that have sprung from our education system have included harnessing the atom, claiming the high ground in space, curing previously fatal diseases. But now, because of our failure to adequately fund education, tuition is skyrocketing. Graduates who wish to reach for achievement are anchored to earth by thousands of dollars in debt. For us to also allow interest rates to double on these student loans is morally unacceptable and economically foolish. To paraphrase President Truman, the extra bucks stop here. Let's stop the student loan interest rates from doubling July 1st. Stop the political games. Let's support American students to attain their highest achievements. I yield back.
For what purpose, the gentleman from Arkansas rise.
Address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to highlight a subject that is personal in Arkansas's 1st Congressional District, the proposed closure of thousands of rural post offices across the country. This week I sent a letter to Postmaster General asking him to give the House of Representatives time to pass meaningful postal reform legislation. As it stands now, over 3,600 post offices are slated for closure on May 15th. In my district alone, 100 post offices have been put on the closure list. In November, I filed the Protecting Our Rural American Post Offices Act of 2011. The bill would prohibit the Postal Service from closing rural post offices that do not have an alternative office within 8 miles accessible by public roads. The bill is an effort to level the field between rural and urban post office closures. So many of the challenges we face here in Washington are not Democrat versus Republican, but rather urban versus rural interests. Americans living in rural communities rely on their post offices for medicine delivery and Social Security benefits and veterans benefits, among other things. Access to postal services should not be limited to urban families. I urge Postmaster General Donahoe to give the House time to pass meaningful postal reform legislation. The Postal Service cannot hope to cure all their budget woes on the backs of rural Americans. Thank you. Yield back.
For what purpose, the gentleman from New York rise? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday I had the golden opportunity to travel with our President to the capital region of upstate New York to visit our Nanotechnology Center. This campus is poised for tremendous growth as we witness an investment in public and private partnership. The President utilized that visit to showcase a very glowing example of the appropriateness of investing in advanced manufacturing. It's a great path toward job creation, job retention. The President underscored the value of investing in precision technology, in R&D, in efficiency, and in workforce development. Workforce development that comes in many dimensions: training, retraining, apprenticeship programs, and yes, the path to success via higher education. Speaking to that, our higher education dreams need to be fostered with affordability and availability. The 3.4% cap on interest rates for student loans cannot grow to 6.8%. We will dumb down the dreams of our young adults who are looking to go onward with their careers through higher education. We need to pass legislation so as to hold that cap at 3.4%, and we cannot allow it to grow come July 1 because of inaction by this Congress. I ask us to pass that measure in this House.
For what purpose, the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Speaker, question unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and advise next stand.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in order to recognize National Teacher Appreciation Week by sharing my heartfelt praise of Pennsylvania's teachers and educators throughout this great country. I'd like to recognize Tricia Miller, Pennsylvania's Teacher of the Year from Pennsylvania Area School District, located in my home county in the Pennsylvania 5th Congressional District, and Margaret McLaughlin of Garnett Valley Area School District in eastern Pennsylvania, who was recipient of the Education Support Professional of the Year Award for Pennsylvania. Their accomplishments are impressive, and both are the type that go above and beyond when helping our students achieve their academic success. Like so many other teachers, they remain tirelessly committed to high achievement and developing the next generation of leaders. And while these two are Pennsylvania's award winners, there are countless of others who dedicate their lives day in and day out to ensure that students live up to their individual potential and strive to push young learners to surpass that potential. As a nation, we must make sure that we celebrate outstanding educators every day. During National Teacher Appreciation Week, I want to thank all teachers for their hard work and dedication. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose, the gentleman from New Jersey rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor our teachers during National Appreciation Week. Teachers do not merely just teach in the classroom, they listen to their students and gently push them to reach their full potential. Teachers serve as role models and mentors. Because of the mentorship of my teachers in high school, I applied for college. I was fortunate to be given a scholarship and an opportunity that I would not have known about it if it were not for my teachers. Upon graduating, I decided to give back to my community and became a teacher. New Jersey has among some of the most talented teachers in the country, and our students are lucky to learn from them. While we are honoring them this week, we should be thankful for their service every day. We trust teachers with our most valuable resources, our children. While we ask teachers to prepare our children to meet the challenges of the 21st century, we must give them the tools to rise to these challenges. Competitive salaries and financial resources must be provided. Let's join together in recognizing our teachers in New Jersey and across the country. Take the time to thank your teacher for their leadership and inspiration. I yield back.
For what purpose, the gentleman from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, as a former community college trustee member, I understand that good education is a key to a sound future. Sadly, many working families in America now find themselves unable to afford higher education for their children. Even worse, if Congress does not act soon, the interest rate for students will double from 3.4 to 6.8. 7.4 million American students will face thousands of dollars in debt if we do not act before July. Last week, the House Republicans showed they're unwilling to work on a real solution to this crisis. It's a shame vote. Republicans put forward a bill to pay for the interest rate to halt by slashing funds for women and children and health services. American young people deserve better. Let's keep their dreams alive. Let's get serious about a bipartisan solution to straighten the Pell program and keep student loan interest rate low. Let's help our students become the leaders of tomorrow. I yield back the balance.
What purpose does the gentlewoman from California rise? Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize May as National Foster Care Month. The goal of this special month is to raise awareness about the experiences and needs of more than 400,000 youth in the foster care system. The Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth asked young people around the country to tell us their experiences via our website, Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth. Throughout the month, you will hear both Democrats and Republicans sharing these stories. For example, Renee, a young woman from Los Angeles, was in foster care for over 8 years. She was placed in 6 different homes until she aged out of the system in June '08. She currently attends UCLA and hopes to pursue a career in social work or community health. Renee now says, and I quote, "Being in foster care has played an integral role in shaping and developing my character and the person I am today. My experience with the foster care system has exposed me to speaking up, communicating with adults, and being open with my peers about my situation, not ashamed of who I am." In honor of Renee's courage and tenacity, I invite my colleagues to join the Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth and co-sponsor the bipartisan resolution in recognition of National Foster Care Youth Month, and to wear the blue ribbon. Thank you.
What purpose does the gentleman from Iowa rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I take a moment to honor and congratulate a constituent and personal friend, Bob Osterhaus. Bob is being recognized by the University of Iowa with an honorary Doctor of Science degree for his service to our state and his work with the University of Iowa Pharmacy program. Bob has spent his entire life serving other people. After he finished his education at the University of Iowa, he served in the United States Army and later served in the Iowa House of Representatives, contributing his perspective as a healthcare professional and shaping legislative initiatives like the Hawkeye Insurance Plan for children from low-income families. He has served his community of Maquoketa, Iowa in many ways. Osterhaus Pharmacy is a staple in the community, and he's active with the Maquoketa Chamber of Commerce, Rotary Club, Sacred Heart Church, and the Knights of Columbus. He was co-founder of the Maquoketa Area Community Foundation and served as its chairman for 7 years. Tomorrow, Bob will receive his honorary Doctor of Science degree. The university could not have made a better selection, and I congratulate Bob for his outstanding service to Iowa, the pharmacy profession, and his country. I yield back.
What purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've had the great privilege of serving in Congress with Senator Richard Lugar. He was in the Aspen Institute, and I got to visit with him on those occasions and received an award from the American Bar Association the same day he did, as did John Lewis, which made it more important than any other award I've received. Richard Lugar's loss is a great loss to this country. He worked in a bipartisan fashion and worked with President Obama on nuclear proliferation treaties and on the approval of Supreme Court justices. He said last night, we are experiencing days of political division in our society. These divisions have stalemated progress in critical areas. They have indeed. And unless the Republican side works with the Democratic side in a bipartisan fashion, we won't be successful, as Richard Lugar tried to do and was defeated for doing it. There's something wrong in the constituencies that don't realize that progress is made by the parties working together, not by one party conquering the other. I yield back the balance of my time.
What purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas rise?
Yes, unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
I thank the Speaker. I thank the Speaker very much, and I join with my colleagues recognizing the crisis that is being faced by the
postal offices across America, both urban and rural. We look forward to bringing a contingent of workers and postal persons from around the country to this Congress to urge to move forward quickly and utilizing the Senate budget, the Senate proposal. At the same time, I'm deeply saddened by a reconciliation budget proposal by my friends on the other side of the aisle that's going to cut the social services block grant, it's going to cut Medicaid, it's going to cut Meals on Wheels. As a former chairperson of the Interfaith Ministries in Houston, Texas, what a sad day to cut Meals on Wheels. Today and this week is Teacher Appreciation Week, and I salute them. They are great and grand as they teach our children that they can reach for the sky. That is why today the Congressional Children's Caucus will host Lee Hurst, the producer and director of the movie Bully. 18 million children have been bullied, like Asher Brown, who lost his life, like a 13-year-old Girl Scout who said that she's been bullied since age 5. Today I ask my colleagues to join me at 1:30 in 2237 for a press conference saying there should be a national call to ending bullying, intervention, and at the same time to come at 2 o'clock to see the movie, 3rd floor, Library of Congress, Madison Building. There must be, and I call for a national solution to bullying in our children's lives. I yield back.
For what purpose, the gentleman from New York rise?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, supervising the Assembly.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise to urge my colleagues to become co-sponsors of my bill, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. While current law prohibits discrimination based on pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions, and directs employers to treat pregnancies the same as any other condition that might temporarily limit an employee's ability to perform some job functions, these protections have proven inadequate. Case law shows that courts are uncertain, even confused, about the scope of the law, requiring Congress to set the record straight. While several states have clarified pregnant workers' rights, this is a national problem that warrants a national solution. My bill would require an employer to make reasonable accommodations for these workers unless this creates an undue hardship on the employer. An employer would be prevented from forcing a pregnant worker to take an accommodation that she does not want or need, and an employer would be prevented from forcing a pregnant worker to take a leave when another reasonable accommodation could keep her on the job. This is a simple solution to a problem our women and families should not be facing. I urge my colleagues to become a co-sponsor of this bill to ensure that a pregnant woman need never decide between maintaining a healthy pregnancy and maintaining her paycheck. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask permission to address the House for 1 minute and reserve the right to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of the Export-Import Bank of the United States, and I urge passage of H.R. 2072, of which I am a co-sponsor. In 2011, the Ex-Im Bank supported 290,000 jobs in the United States. Additionally, over the past 10 years, the Ex-Im Bank actually returned $900 million to the United States Treasury. When a program supports so many manufacturing jobs and it doesn't cost the taxpayer a dime, you would expect this bill to be an easy win. And yet, some members on the far right are prepared to put extreme ideology above jobs for Americans. This bill is a real jobs bill, and I urge its support. I yield back the remainder of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oregon seek recognition? Without objection.
Clock's ticking. 6 days from today, an incompetent, ideological Board of Governors of the United States Postal Service intends to close thousands of post offices and processing centers, degrading service, denying access for millions of individual Americans, especially seniors, veterans, for small business owners, and others. And what's the reaction of the Republican leadership in the House? Nothing. Silence. We're in session to 1 o'clock in the morning voting on imaginary amendments to a bill that's not going anywhere, but they can't bestir themselves to bring forward a bill to save this critical institution. The Senate has acted. Their bill's not perfect, but it's better than inaction in face of the wrecking crew that is governing our Postal Service. I urge my colleagues to support my bill, co-sponsor my bill, H.R. 3591, put the Postal Service on a sustainable path toward a 21st century Postal Service, modernized and self-sufficient. But inaction and indifference will destroy this critical institution.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Yes, unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my
Without
remarks.
objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Ronald Reagan was the last president to raise the federal gasoline excise tax to support transportation programs when he signed the Surface Transportation Act of 1982. He justified the gas tax increase as necessary to pay for needed investments in building and maintaining our nation's surface transportation infrastructure and to help jumpstart an economy that was then also stuck in a recession. He referred to the highway bill as a jobs bill to promote economic growth. Since that bill was signed into law back in January of 1983, Republican-controlled Congresses have allowed the program to go bankrupt, necessitating multiple infusions from general funds to allow it to limp along with short-term extensions of current law. Today, some within this chamber won't even support a federal transportation bill at current funding levels, as if the crumbling interstates and growing list of structurally deficient bridges are no longer a federal responsibility. Instead, they insist on including unrelated measures like the Keystone XL pipeline that is designed to stall completion of even a modest multi-year authorization. Mr. Speaker, the Keystone Pipeline has nothing to do with the transportation bill and will have no impact on gasoline prices, despite what its advocates claim. Today, there is already an estimated 20-year excess capacity of oil pipelines from Canada to the United States. This is about being able to export oil from the Gulf Coast to other countries. Mr. Speaker, it's time to pass a thoughtful transportation bill for the 21st century. Thank you.
Chair lays before the House of Communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. Pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2H of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of Representatives, the clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on May 9, 2012 at 9:22 a.m. that the Senate passed without amendment H.R. 2668, that the Senate passed Senate 743. With best wishes, I am, signed sincerely, Karen L. Haas.
Chair lays before the House a message.
To the Congress of the United States, Section 202D of the National Emergencies Act, 50 U.S.C. 1622D, provides for the automatic termination of a national emergency unless within 90 days prior to the anniversary date of its declaration, the President publishes in the Federal Register and transmits to the Congress a notice stating that the emergency is to continue in effect beyond the anniversary date. In accordance with this provision, I have sent to the Federal Register for publication the enclosed notice stating that the national emergency with respect to the actions of the government of Syria declared in Executive Order 13338 of May 11, 2004, as modified in scope and relied upon for additional steps taken in Executive Order 13399 of August 25, 2006, and Executive Order 13608 of May 1, 2012, is to continue in effect beyond May 11, 2012. While the Syrian regime has reduced the number of foreign fighters bound for Iraq, the regime's own brutality and repression of its citizens, who have been calling for freedom and a representative government, endangers not only the Syrian people themselves, but could yield greater instability throughout the region. The Syrian regime's actions and policies, including obstructing the Lebanese government's ability to function effectively, pursuing chemical and biological weapons, and supporting terrorist organizations, continue to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. For these reasons, I have determined that it is necessary to continue in effect the national emergency declared with respect to this threat and to maintain and enforce the sanctions to address this national emergency. In addition, the United States condemns the Assad regime's use of brutal violence and human rights abuses and calls on the Assad regime to step aside and immediately begin a transition in Syria to a political process that will forge a credible path to a future of greater freedom, democracy, opportunity, and justice. The United States will consider changes in the composition, policies, and actions of the government of Syria in determining whether to continue or terminate this national emergency in the future. Signed, Barack Obama, the White House, May 9, 2012.
Referred to the Committee on Foreign Affairs and ordered printed. Of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the ayes and nays are ordered, or on which a vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Record votes will be postponed on postponed questions will be taken later today. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass Bill H.R. 2072 as amended.
Clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2072, a bill to reauthorize the Export-Import Bank of the United States and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from California, Mr. Gary Miller, and the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. McCarthy, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to add extraneous material to the bill.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I might consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Today we are considering H.R. 2072, the Creating American Jobs Through Export Act, bill which will reauthorize the Export-Import Bank. This legislation is the product of bipartisan discussions surrounding a common theme, maintaining and creating jobs in the United States. The key to our economic recovery is jobs, without a doubt. In order to expand and hire new workers, American companies must have the ability to compete in a global economy. To create jobs, American companies need to be competitive with foreign companies that have access to credit in their countries. While the U.S. is a leading voice in the effort to eliminate marketing distortion with export subsidies, the Ex-Im Bank has helped to ensure that there is a level playing field for American companies when they compete with foreign competitors who are basically supported by aggressive credit agencies. Ex-Im responds to market distortion by leveling the playing field. Ex-Im loans and guarantees are often countervailing measures to compete against other foreign credit agencies. Some members have concerns about this program. This bill directs the Treasury Department to initiate and pursue negotiations with other countries to substantially reduce their subsidized export financing programs and other forms of export subsidies. The problem we face is the option of allowing China to dominate the export market. This bill ensures that U.S. companies, large and small, can compete and win against foreign competitors like China, and as a result create U.S. jobs without putting U.S. taxpayers at risk. During the reauthorization process, we have made taxpayer protection our top priority. This bill includes strong language to ensure that surplus of the Ex-Im Bank is returned to the Treasury are continued today and in the future. We want the bank to be continually self-financing entity. The bill increases accountability and risk management requirements for the bank, as well as provides for an audit of bank transactions to monitor the effectiveness and adequacy of the bank's due diligence practice and lending policies. The bill ensures that the bank stays true to its purpose as a lender of last resort and does not compete against private sector commercial banks. The bill includes language to make sure default rates stay low. Ex-Im loans and loan guarantees present very low risk because they are backed by collateral of the real goods for which a buyer has already been found and prices have been agreed upon. The current default rate at the bank is less than 2%, much lower than commercial banks. Even with the bank's track record of extremely low default, the bill includes language to ensure that default rates stay below 2% and includes corrective action requirements if the rate ever goes above that level. The bank does not put taxpayers at risk now. Our goal in this bill is to ensure that the bank does not put taxpayer at risk in the future either. The bill also includes a new transparency provision for large transactions that gives the public the opportunity to comment on such transactions. Provision seeks to ensure the bank has information it needs to confirm it is not supporting transactions used to support products that could be used to compete with American companies. This provision was crafted in a way that does not impact U.S. companies' ability to sell their products and services to global customers. Proprietary information, confidential information, and trade secrets are absolutely protected in its provision. In addition, while many of the large projects supported by the bank are known to the market, I want to emphasize that the bank, at its sole discretion, has the authority to determine the information disclosed to ensure that the competitiveness of American companies is not compromised by information provided by the Federal Register notice. Legislation also provides information included in the technology improvements, a review of the bank's domestic content policy, improvements to the access of textile industries to bank operations. This is absolutely necessary in this country. These provisions will ensure that our American companies can utilize bank products to compete globally. This is not a subsidy, and there's no cost to the taxpayers. That needs to be emphasized. The way Ex-Im Bank allows U.S. companies to compete globally is an example of how our government can facilitate job growth without contributing to the national debt. Far from being a handout to corporations, Ex-Im Bank is self-financing, it turns a profit for the American taxpayer, and it helps create jobs here at home. Since 2005, the bank has forwarded more than $3.4 billion in profits to the Treasury, above all costs, loss reserves, including $400 million in 2011 alone. Legislation before us today ensures that Ex-Im Bank will continue to turn a profit for American taxpayers. Some will say that Ex-Im only benefits large corporations. However, small businesses account for 87% of export-import transactions. These small business transaction figures do not include the tens of thousands of small and medium-sized businesses that supplies goods to these large corporations. Dave Ackert, Vice President of Air Tractor of Alny, Texas, a small business engaged in manufacturing and sale of agricultural and firefighting planes, said at one point in our hearing, quote, Ex-Im has contributed to the growth of Air Tractor and helped both create and maintain jobs in Alny, Texas. Ex-Im support has allowed us to sell aircraft to customers. Without the support, we would not have the ability to purchase our products. This is a direct contribution to our growth, end quote. Air Tractor has 270 employees in a town that has a population of 3,000. Over 10% of the population who are adults work for this company in this town. It's the largest employer in Alny. Since 1994, when they did their first Ex-Im transaction, their export sales have increased from 10% of what they produced to 56%. With 50% export sales in 2010, there are over 100 employees at Air Tractor in Alny, Texas, that own their jobs and have their jobs due to use of Ex-Im Bank. Mr. Eichert said, quote, as I have described it before, Alny has 3 red lights, a Dairy Queen, and the significance of this is that we can create jobs on Main Street. Alny through small business exporting. It can be done in small businesses from California to New York. If we can do it in Alny, Texas, we can do it all over this country, end quote. Once again, I'd like to thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for coming together to put American jobs before politics. Together, we have crafted a strong bill to ensure the bank is able to continue to support U.S. companies as they compete globally and, as a result, create American jobs. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself much time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume. I rise today in support of H.R. 2072, the Export-Import Bank Reauthorization Act of 2012. I would also like to thank Majority Leader Cantor and Minority Whip Hoyer for their leadership on this bill, as well as full committee chairman Mr. Bacchus and ranking member Mr. Frank, and certainly my chairman on the subcommittee, Mr. Miller. But I also would like to thank all of the staff for their hard work on this important legislation, especially Leslie Gooch from Chairman Miller's staff and Georgette Sierra from my staff, who worked on this for over a year. I'm very proud to be supporting the bill before us today. Our nation is at a crossroads. One job at a time, we are gradually emerging from one of the worst recessions in living memory. At this moment, we can either stand in the way of America's ongoing recovery or speed it up. American businesses have recently watched their counterparts in other countries, like China, become world leaders in exporting. I believe strongly that now it's America's turn. It's America's turn to put our workers, the best workers in the world, to work in selling their goods and services to an untapped global market. It's America's turn to see its innovative businesses reach their full potential to grow and create local jobs in communities across this country. I'm confident with the help from the Export-Import Bank, American businesses can help make our nation an unrivaled world economical leader once again. But the clock is ticking, and we must act now. The legislation before us brings certainty for many U.S. businesses anxiously waiting for Congress to reauthorize the bank before the May 31st deadline. H.R. 2072 provides a 3-year reauthorization and incremental increase in the bank's exposure limit, allowing the bank to meet the increased demand from U.S. export companies. The bill includes provisions to enhance the bank's accountability by allotting funds for much-needed technology upgrades, requiring the bank to submit a business plan and to monitor and report to Congress if their default rate goes above 2%. The Export-Import Bank is the export credit agency of the United States and provides export financing for American companies when private financing isn't available. The bank is critical for helping U.S. companies create American jobs and compete in global markets by selling our goods, their goods, services to foreign buyers. Throughout the financial crisis, the bank played a crucial role in ensuring that American companies were able to continue exporting when private trade financing options were not available. The bank has allowed the United States to remain competitive in the global economy by fulfilling its mission of creating or sustaining U.S. jobs across the 50 states through exports. In fiscal year 2011, the bank provided over $30 billion in financing to 3,600 companies in the USA, which supported nearly 290,000 American jobs. Over 80% of those transactions were for small businesses like Aeroliso Incorporated, which sells aerospace parts in my own district in New York. It's important to note that the work of the bank is done at no cost to the American taxpayer, as the bank is self-sustaining, funding its financial programs and administration costs from fees and the returns on its investments. In fact, the bank returns money to the Treasury, and since 2008, they have returned almost $2 billion to the Treasury. Foreign governments are aggressively supporting their own exporters so they can dominate new markets and be the world leaders in exporting. Through the Export-Import Bank's assistance, we can assure the American companies have the tools to be globally competitive and will continue to create jobs in the United States and move our economy forward. Prominent business organizations such as the National Association of Manufacturers, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, and Labor understand the important role of the bank and support its reauthorization. It shows how we all work together with Mr. Miller's help to bring this bill to the floor. In just a few weeks, the bank's charter will expire. Without Congress quickly enacting a long-term reauthorization and cap increase, thousands of American jobs will be lost, and the U.S. businesses that rely on banking finance will be in jeopardy. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 2072, which provides the certainty businesses around our country who rely on the bank need in order to continue growing and creating jobs here at home through exports. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves the balance of her time. Gentleman from California.
Yes, I'd be happy to yield 1 minute to Mr. Manzuto, a staunch advocate for textile exports in this country.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, President Reagan taught us you don't negotiate from a position of weakness. There are over 80 foreign government export credit agencies that vigorously support their local companies in winning export sales. We cannot unilaterally disarm by ending XM. That will only empower our competitors to snatch away export and job opportunities from our companies. Some of these businesses are critical to our defense industrial base and need commercial sales to support their national security work. Reagan recognized this reality. That's why I supported XM Bank. When I chaired the Small Business Committee, I had the opportunity to establish the Small Business Desk or Division at the Export-Import Bank. A constituent of mine was able to obtain an $11,000 loan in order to start her exporting business from a very tiny company. So I would urge my colleagues to vote for the reauthorization, to be a part of helping our manufacturers sell their products abroad.
Gentleman from New York.
I yield 5 minutes to the Minority Whip, Mr. Hoyer, and thank him again for his leadership on this issue.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 5 minutes.
Ask unanimous consent to revise and extend.
Without objection.
I want to thank the gentlelady for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to be here today. And we are here as the result of some work of some extraordinary staff people, and I want to start by mentioning them. First of all, I want to congratulate and thank Mr. Miller and his staff. I want to thank the staff of the Banking Committee, Mr. John Hughes of my staff, who formerly of the Banking Committee, Financial Services Committee, has worked tirelessly with an extraordinary policy director, Neil Bradley, who works for Mr. Cantor. We've worked on this matter in a bipartisan fashion. This bill comes to the floor as a bipartisan bill, and I'm hopeful and believe it will pass with an overwhelmingly bipartisan vote. Mr. Speaker, today we are ending the uncertainty for American manufacturers waiting for Congress to act by coming together to reauthorize the U.S. Export-Import Bank. I want to thank the Republican leader, Mr. Cantor, and his staff. I mentioned Neil Bradley before, for working with Democrats to find common ground and reach an agreement that is supported by both business and labor, Democrats and Republicans. I also want to commend Ranking Member Barney Frank of the Financial Services Committee, and as Carolyn McCarthy, who's done such an extraordinary effort on this effort as well. She chairs, or she's the ranking member, and Mr. Miller chairs the International Trade and Monetary Policy Subcommittee. Their hard work has been important to make sure this agreement will help American businesses save and create jobs. I also want to thank Representative Rick Larson for his tireless advocacy for a long-term reauthorization of the bank. In addition, I would be remiss if I did not mention my dear and good friend who's the ranking Democrat on the Appropriations Committee, but who's been an extraordinary leader on making sure that America creates jobs and exports products around the world, Mr. Norman Dix. Congressman Dix from Washington State has been working with me every day that we've been at these negotiations. I want to thank him for his contributions to this outcome. For 2 years, Mr. Speaker, House Democrats have been promoting a comprehensive jobs plan called Make It in America. Mr. Don Manzullo was on the floor. He has been focused on that. But so many Republicans have been focused on, you may not use my phrase, make it in America, but you've been focused on trying to build jobs. Here in America, we've been promoting a Make It in America agenda. This is part, and has been, in our published Make It in America agenda, this has been part of it, the Export-Import Bank financing. By financing American companies' efforts to export their products overseas, the Export-Import Bank plays a direct role, as Chairlady McCarthy has pointed out, a direct role in helping our businesses expand and hire more employees for well-paying jobs, jobs that will not be shipped overseas. The Export-Import Bank doesn't cost taxpayers a single penny. In fact, it has generated $1.9 billion, $2 billion rounded, as the chairlady said, in excess revenues for U.S. taxpayers over the past 5 years. And it provides a critical service that our companies need to access foreign markets on a level playing field. I'm encouraged that we were able to reach this agreement to increase the Export-Import Bank's exposure limit to $120 billion through the end of this fiscal year and raise it to $140 billion over the next 2 years. In 2011, finances from the Export-Import Bank helped create nearly 300,000 jobs at 3,600 private companies across America. This is a jobs bill for Americans. Yes, I said 3,600 companies. An unmentioned fact is that over 85% of the bank's transactions are for small businesses. We talk a lot about the large businesses, Boeing in particular, one of our best exports and job creators. But 3,600 businesses, most of which are small businesses. The products American workers make are the best in the world. American workers and American entrepreneurs can compete with anybody in the world if they have a level playing field. This helps get there. When that happens, our workers succeed, and that means more of our people can make it in America. That's what Americans want to do. They want to make it. They want to make it. They want to succeed. They want to have their kids have opportunities. And they want to make it. And one of the ways we're going to make it in America is to make it in America, manufacture it in America, grow it in America, and sell it here and around the world, and create jobs here, good-paying jobs for our people. They'll feel better about that. I urge all of my colleagues to support this legislation. I hope this vote is unanimous. It's a vote for America, America's workers, and America's ability to compete globally. And I thank the Speaker for his tolerance. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I'd yield the gentlelady from New York 2 minutes for the purpose of a colloquy.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I wish to engage the chairman of the subcommittee in a colloquy regarding Section 8 of the bill relating to a new notice and commitment period for bank transactions over $100 million. Specifically, I wish to inquire of the chairman the scope of the bank's ability to exclude from the notice required to be published in the Federal Register information that is proprietary or confidential that would violate the Trade Secrets Act or what would jeopardize jobs in the U.S. by supplying information which competitors could use to compete with companies in the USA.
Reclaiming my time, Mr. Speaker. Thank my colleague for inquiry. The bill requires the Federal Register notice to include the identities of the obligor, principal supplier, and guarantor. Additional notice is to include the description of the item being financed. However, the description must be constructed in a way as to not disclose proprietary or confidential information or information that would violate the otherwise required disclosure of the trade secrets and defined by the Trade Secrets Act, or information that would jeopardize jobs in the U.S. by supplying information which competitors could use to compete with other companies in the U.S. When determining what description to use in describing an item being financed, the bank must take into account the totality of the Federal Register notice. For example, description of the item should be done in a way that, when combined with the name of the principal supplier, information is not disclosed which foreign competitors could use to compete against U.S. suppliers, thereby jeopardizing jobs in the U.S. I yield.
Mr. Speaker, if I may, I would like to inquire of the chairman further. What is the expectation with respect to the amount of time transactions might be delayed as a result of the new notice and comment period?
Reclaiming my time, Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for inquiry. The bill requires that the public be given it not less than 25 days for the submission of comments prior to the board consideration of proposed transaction. Upon the conclusion of those 25 days, the bank should expeditiously prepare material submitted to public comments for consideration by the board. Transactions in excess of $100 million are currently subject to review by the Congress for 25 days of session, which can be longer than 25 calendar days. It is our intent that the board proceed with consideration of pending application as soon as legally and practically possible. I yield back.
I thank the chairman, and I yield back.
Gentlelady from New York.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Neal.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentlelady. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this bill that it reauthorizes the Export-Import Bank for 3 years. It ends uncertainty for business and provides the resources necessary to keep American manufacturers competitive in the global market. $32 billion in financing to thousands of companies, which supports 290,000 jobs. In Massachusetts, the Ex-Im Bank works with Intellicoat Technologies, a manufacturer of coated paper in South Hadley that employs 100 people. It also has an important role with Wyman Gordon, a manufacturer in the aerospace industry located in North Grafton, Massachusetts, with almost 600 employees. This is a critical support that is offered for American employers who seek to level the playing field against global competitors. It's supported broadly by labor and business, and I urge all of us to support H.R. 2072.
Gentleman from California.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it's my honor to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Missouri, my friend Mr. Lukemeyer.
Gentleman from Missouri is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the gentleman from California, Mr. Miller. I rise today in support of H.R. 2072, the Securing American Jobs Through Export Act. There's been a lot of distracting talk surrounding reauthorization of the Export-Import Bank. So I'd like to be clear. This is a jobs bill. EXM financing helps provide jobs for employees of U.S. manufacturers and small businesses, all at no cost to taxpayers. In fact, this government program actually makes money and returns it to the Treasury. Critics say that EXM lending only benefits the nation's largest corporations, but this is simply not the case, as the Minority Whip just indicated a moment ago. I have 5 companies in my district that benefit from EXM bank financing. Not one of them is a multinational corporation, and none have received millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's because of the support of EXM that they have been able to grow their businesses, hire employees, and increase their exports. They'd have one of those small businesses had this to say about EXM, and I quote, "For the last 5 years, EXM has supported 17% of our export sales. That converts to 10 full-time jobs for 5 years. Our employees and their families rely on EXM financing to support our export sales," end quote. This isn't testimony of a Fortune 100 CEO. This is the voice of a family-run, multi-generational small business that relies on EXM to help manage the risk of extending credit to buyers outside the U.S. This is a manufacturer that during the housing crisis had to lay off 3/4 of its employees, but thanks in large part to EXM financing, was able to survive the downturn and has started to grow again. I want to remind my colleagues that this bill also makes meaningful reforms to the EXM Export-Import Bank. Despite the fact that the bank has an incredibly low default rate, less than 2%, this bill makes additional steps to protect taxpayers and reduce export subsidies over time. I commend the Majority Leader candidate for creating a bill that simultaneously helps to create jobs and mandates reform. I urge all my colleagues to support this legislation, and I yield back.
Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Larson.
Gentleman from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to urge my colleagues to vote in favor of H.R. 2072, the Securing American Jobs Through Exports Act. The Export-Import Bank creates jobs, reduces our trade deficit, and helps to lower our national debt. It's a tool that our manufacturers, both large and small, use to expand their sales to customers around the world so they can keep creating jobs here at home. In Washington State's 2nd Congressional District, the EXIM Bank has helped finance the sale of more than $22 billion in exports from 13 companies, including, importantly, 7 small businesses. Last week, I sat down with 3 businesses in my district that have used the bank. The CEO of one of these companies told me the bank has been indispensable in allowing their business to grow and support 25 full-time employees. I was very pleased to introduce a bipartisan bill earlier this year with Congressman Zullo to reauthorize and expand the EXIM Bank, and I'm very happy that Whip Hoyer and Leader Cantor were able to work out the sensible bipartisan agreement that is largely in line with the bill I introduced, H.R. 4302. I call on my colleagues to pass this bill so we can keep America open for business, and I yield back.
Gentleman from California.
Yes, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Illinois, the Vice Chair of the Subcommittee, Mr. Dold.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I certainly think this is an important topic as we talk about jobs in the economy as the #1 issue that we face in this country. Today I'm pleased to come down and rise in support of the EXIM Bank, as it's something that I think is vital, something that we worked in a bipartisan fashion through the committee, and something that I think all of our colleagues should be supporting. When we look at what the EXIM Bank does, most of us think oftentimes about large businesses, whether it be Boeing and others. The fact still remains that certainly across the country, and I know in my district, the 10th District of Illinois, 83% of all the loans actually go to small businesses. But it does help big businesses. Back in my district, we have one of the largest manufacturing districts in the country. Over 93,000 employees are in manufacturing, and well over 50,000 of those employees rely upon exports. The world today is flatter than it's ever been, and we need to make sure that our companies are competitive in the global marketplace. Again, I want to emphasize 83% of those loans go to small businesses. But if we take a look at the big businesses, and we can take a look at Boeing, when a Boeing jetliner, the 777, lands anywhere in the world, it lands with the help of 22,000 small businesses, most of them right here at home. So when the Minority Whip talks about making it here in America, we do want to make it here in America. We want to make sure that American workers have a level playing field, and we want to sell American all over the globe. We want to make sure that we are giving them the opportunity. The EXIM Bank is going to be done at no cost to the taxpayer. We're going to bring dollars actually into the federal treasury. We want to make sure that we're giving our businesses an opportunity to compete, because what this is about making sure we can sell American all over the globe. So I want to urge my colleagues to support this bill. In 2011 alone, the bank supported over 288,000 American jobs and helped finance over 3,600 American companies. This is an important piece of legislation, and one that we should all be able to get behind. With every $1 billion of exports, they say 7,200 jobs are created. This is a jobs bill, and when we talk about jobs in the economy, this is the time. I urge my colleagues to support it, and I yield back.
Gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Michigan and ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Levin.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute. Without objection.
I urge a yes vote. The Wall Street Journal calls support for the Ex-Im Bank in quotes, job creation French style. I'm not sure why they pick on the French. While the House Republicans have been agonizing about acting, export powerhouses like China have been dramatically increasing their export financing programs. Over the past year, China issued 4 times the amount invested by the U.S., and China is not alone. Germany, France, and India all provided at least 7 times more export assistance as a share of GDP than the U.S. The rigid attitude of the Wall Street Journal is that if the other side rigs the field of competition, you should do nothing. They believe that those nations will only hurt themselves if they act, and it will all work out in the wash for you in the end. The problem is that in the meanwhile, you drown. I urge a yes vote.
Gentleman from California.
Yes, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to my good friend from California, Mr. Campbell.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank my colleague from California for yielding, Mr. Speaker.